Hello, welcome to this topic video on JSON. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, which may or may not mean anything to you. We want to understand JSON is just a restricted subset of JavaScript types. We want to understand and use JSON with JavaScript or almost any other programming language. We want to understand the popularity of JSON in web applications and to be able to use JSON formatted information for data storage, transmission, configuration, etc. Okay, it's going to be a theme throughout this course. References. There's a great JSON site. Not only is there one standard, there's standards that are the same from two different standards bodies. One is the JavaScript people, and one is the IETF that brings you the internet standard. So if you go to this, click this link, you'll go to the folks that bring you JavaScript. This link will bring you the information from the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, that brings you the web, the protocols underneath the web. So what is it? It's the most popular general data exchange format used in modern web programming, okay? Particularly between the clients and the servers, okay? There's a term from Web 2.0 or whatever called AJAX, okay? This is when the web started getting a lot more interactive. This is when programs, JavaScript, started sending data to the server and back and forth, rather than loading new pages for everything you did in a web browser. So asynchronous JavaScript and XML is what AJAX stood for. However, all modern web applications use JSON for these types of data exchanges now. Okay. Is it just JavaScript? Well, yeah, it is. Okay. But it's not, because it's a very restricted subset of JavaScript types that is sufficiently powerful to model almost any data. We're not concerned here with programming as much as data structures. Okay? It is essentially based on JavaScript object literals, array literals, and primitive types. Okay? That's it. Formally, from the folks at JSON.org, it's built on two structures. Like I said, an object, which, what is a JavaScript object? It's a collection of name-value pairs. In various languages, this is realized as an object in JavaScript, a record, a struct in C, C++, a dictionary in Python, a hash table, or a key list, or an associated array. Those are all the terms that are used for that kind of data structure. So it's name value pairs. We know them as JavaScript objects. Okay. The next thing we have is an ordered list. Okay. One is name value pairs, the other is an ordered list. Okay. In JavaScript, that is an array. Okay. In Python, that would be a list. Okay. So those are the two fundamental data structures used. That's it. Then we have primitive types. Okay. You're used to this syntax. Okay. A JavaScript object has a brace, ending brace. It's got a string, colon, value, and then you can have commas and repeat. These diagrams are known as railroad track diagrams. They describe the syntax exactly of a language. In this case, we're talking about JSON. Okay, first thing, JSON objects are stricter than a JavaScript object. Okay, JSON, we would say, we had to use a string. What is the rule? We have a string, then a value. Strings have to be quoted. Okay, so double quotes, course, then here's a string value, here's a string, colon, then a value. Okay, we must use double quoted strings for the properties. In JavaScript, we can say course, blah, num student, blah, okay? This is fine in JavaScript. It's illegal in JSON, okay? It doesn't know what this would mean, okay? All properties must be double quoted, okay? A JSON array, what is that? It's a JavaScript array. It looks like a bracket, a value. If you have more than one value, you separate them with commas. Easy peasy, okay? What are the values, the permitted values? You can put a string in it, a number, true, false, null. But wait a second. The values you can put can be objects or arrays themselves, which means you can nest objects within arrays within arrays within an object. Yes, this is how we can model just about any data structure you like, okay? Or to create any complex data structure you like, okay? JSON strings have they're strictly double quotes, okay? They have escape characters, okay? Any Unicode character except double quotes or the backslash, because the backslash is used to escape things, okay? And it's got similar to what you used in other programming language, okay? JSON string is stricter than a JavaScript string. JavaScript has single quoted, double quoted, and backtick strings. JSON only has double quoted strings. Why do they do this? To simplify the processing on the thing that's going to receive the JSON and turn it into something. Oh, okay. Number formats. They got all the normal formats we could, floating point and integer, etc. Okay, these are literal number formats. Now, because JSON is this restricted subset, almost all programming libraries, aren't we working with JavaScript here? Yeah, but we exchange data with all sorts of systems. And because JSON has proven so popular, so flexible, okay, almost all programming languages have at least one JSON library. Many will have multiples. If you go and look for libraries for C and C++, you will find many different libraries for those languages. Some are optimized for speed, some are optimized by size, for size and combination. You can find them for IoT devices, etc. Okay, I like using JSON when I have to configure IoT devices. Okay, this configuration gets complicated. Okay, so this is how one way that we can talk with other languages nicely. Okay, in JavaScript. JavaScript gives us two functions, okay, as part of the JSON object. For parsing, it'll take a string and add a JSON string, and it'll turn it into a JavaScript object, okay, or array if it's just a plain array, not a containing object. On the other side, we can take any kind of JavaScript array or object and stringify it, okay? There's got to be a simple data structure. If you've got functions embedded in it, it doesn't know what to do with those functions, okay? So let's give this a quick try just to see. Okay, so here's an example. It's an example code. What does it consist of? Okay. Let's start with the string. Okay, what are we defining here? My string, single quotes, then we put a brace, then for the property name we have to use double quotes, so this is a strict JSON, this is JSON, the equal JSON, in string format, okay? Within this single quoted string is strict JSON, okay? Let's see what happens. The thing, it says is an object. Okay. So that means I should be able to go get like name. Okay. What's my string? Oh, my string really is a string. They're showing it here, raw. Okay. All right, it's got a length. Okay. We do type of my string. It will tell us it's a string. On the command line, we don't really go back and forth too much because it helps us see which things are JavaScript objects and which things are strings. Okay, not much of confusion. Okay, but we have to realize when we're working with JSON, we're sending stuff as strings. So let's look at the second half of this example. Okay, let's get rid of this stuff. Start with an object. Here we define an object. Then we're going to stringify it. Okay. So my object is an object. It's got a bunch of pieces to it. It's got a list of arrays, blah, blah, blah. Okay. What about my string? As you guess, it's a string. Okay. This is all ready to be sent. Okay. So it's a string. Now, going faster, this is kind of trivial. Okay. Let's see where else us as developers come across JSON. So I'm going to drop into a project I was working on, or I've been working on. Okay, it's a React app. Here's one of those mysterious files. Okay, .babelrc. Don't know what that is. Let's take a look inside. Wait a second. Brace. Closing brace. Double quoted property name. Colon. Oh, then an array. Hey, wait a second. This is JSON. Let's tell the syntax highlighter that it is. Oh. So it's got two fields. One is an array, okay, that contains a list of things. Then we got another one, which is plugins, which is an array of, wow, array, wow, okay, closing brace here. Oh, okay. So this is some weird configuration file that I set up for some reason. Okay, where else? Let's see if there's a more obvious one in here. Oh, look at this. There's something called package JSON. At least that says JSON. Let's open it up with a different editor. Ah, look at this. This is all sorts of information used for building. These are the dependencies, all the libraries I'm using to build this application. But what's the format? The format here is JSON. We see all these different property names. Okay. Oh. So, configurations information is done this way. What else might we use it for? What else would we use JSON for? A great thing to use it for is before you've got real users and real data, what we can do is create what we call mock data. Here is a list of users. They are not real people. They are not real emails. They are not real net IDs which is used at the school I teach at. Okay, they are generated by a nice helpful generation program for generating random data. I store them as JSON. Then what do I do with it? Let's take one more look. We've got one last slide to go here. Importing JSON files. Now this is a hidden feature both in Node.js and popular bundlers. Okay. In Node.js, you import other libraries using something called require, the require function. If you run require and give it a JSON file, it will automatically turn that into a JavaScript object/array for you. Okay. So when I make a little server program and I want to have a bunch of fake users, imaginary users to build my server with, I can import a bunch of data with this require keyword that's in JSON form, and it gets turned in to JavaScript objects. I don't even have to call JSON.parse. And bundlers, so now we're talking about client side, that put together all your different JavaScript libraries and separate JavaScript files and build them into a single file for deployment, such as Parcel and Webpack. You can, if you use import on a JSON file, it'll do the same thing. It'll import it into a JavaScript object array. So a lot of times when I'm working out complicated graphical user interfaces that I'm going to show with React or do something with D3 or whatever, I start off with some sample data that is I put in a JSON form that I import or require, and then I work with that. That's before I get my server or my data sources all hooked up. I don't have to have databases already hooked up and set up. Okay, so not only is JSON the format that we're going to be using, and we'll use all over the place between client and server, we're going to use it all over the place for development purposes too. Okay, talk to you later.